perfect. The focus mode is on. That is great. Yeah, Lindsay, the recording is on.
Okay, now.
Welcome, good morning, good afternoon. This is the second day of the Womanium Quantum Computing Program. Dr. Marlo Lozano is going to kick off today, but before she starts, I did want to say we've had an amazing team that's joined and helped make this program a reality. Many of them are young, many of them are students, many of them are incredibly committed to the program, but also scientists in their own right and are doing very fascinating work. So today we wanted to share with you and spotlight some of our team members themselves who are doing incredible research that I think all of you will enjoy hearing about today. So this is where Dr. Marlo can tell you a little bit more about each of the fellows, and they will in turn share more about the research and what they're doing.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Prachi. And welcome everyone. Welcome back to the Global Quantum Computing and Entrepreneurship Program. We have the second day today of, in total, 7 weeks. This is the second day of the 4-week quantum training program, where you will learn about quantum hardware, quantum software, and a lot of application entrepreneurship. Today, we will first have an introduction to all the research that the Womanium Fellows are doing. And this ranges from quantum sensing, quantum for financial applications, to interning at Northrop Grumman or IonQ. And then your software quantum programming training start with Gibran Rashid from QWorld, who will kick off QBronze, classical quantum. First, a recap of yesterday. Yesterday, we had a wonderful session with the keynote in quantum computing by Whirling and the crash course quantum mechanics by Shaima Zaman Ahmed. I am very grateful for your active participation and even some beautiful summaries afterward, which I would like to highlight here. Aviral Mishra wrote a summary of yesterday's session. In the first half, a fabulous and so interesting presentation by William Hurley, covering the history of quantum mechanics, how the first quantum revolution started 100 years ago at the Solvay conference. Then a brief idea about the industrial progress until now and future projections, classical versus quantum, how they are interdependent, explaining Shor's algorithm using a couple of examples, concept of quantum walk, classical walk, and the application of quantum computing at various industries, many more. And then crash course into quantum mechanics by Shaima. What is quantum mechanics? The properties of a quantum system, terminologies, quantum harmonic oscillator, and then quizzes. And many of you already did the quiz on Canvas to get eventually the certificate for the module. Abba also pointed out that Worley gave a realistic look into the quantum computing development. And although we are in a quantum summer now with billions and billions of funding, a winter of quantum might come, but this is a great thing for the true development of field. And he encouraged everyone, irrespective of your background and whether you fit into the ideal candidate image, start quantum journey now. The quantum workforce is diverse and needs people from all walks of life, and that is what we are all here for. That brings us to today, the Womanium Quantum Spotlights and the QBronze Start Classic Quantum. After that, we will stay tuned. Career fairs are coming up for which you are being prepared now. The Hackathon Challenge is coming up after all the sessions that we are doing now, and eventually you can earn for Womanium Quantum Fellows. You are all ready. I look forward tremendously, and we will start Rayssa about quantum sensing with light.
Everyone, and it's a pleasure to talk to you today. As Marlo said, it's Rayssa, and I'm a researcher at the Detector University of Denmark. I will talk with you today about the research that I'm developing. It's quantum sensing with exquisite light, and I would like first to mention you about the that we have in the group that I work. So as I told you before, I work at Denmark, the Quantum Physics and Information Group. And in this group, now we have a big vision that is to understand, to engineer, and to control complex quantum systems of light and matter. And for doing so, we have different platforms which we work theory and experiment, like Diamond, cavitation mechanics, quantum thermodynamics. And our focus is to develop quantum technology using this platform. And inside all of the platforms that we have, I work inside the CV optics domain that is called quantum sense. So here I would like to call you for your attention for what do you do, right? To sense quantum states of. So if you just think really about, you have a perfect laser and you'd like to probe your biological sample, for example, or any sample that you'd like, this laser has intrinsic noise that we call it shock. And when you pass this laser light in your sample, in your device, you see a signature here. And you can see the signature in this graph on your right as pink curve that appears. You see that this is really small signature and it's almost in the noise floor of. So now now, if you'd like to go beyond it, if you'd like to see better and more, how can we do it, right? One way of doing so is increasing the optical power. But if you do it, you can damage your sample. And this is not good for the purpose of your experiment, right? So instead of increasing the optical power, but if you could lower the noise floor, this would be perfect. And this is what to do using specific quantum states of light. Marlo, next slide. Yes. So when you use exquisite states of light, what we have is we use the same setup. We don't change any characteristics of the setup, but we do change the type of light that we are passing through the sample. And when we do so, instead of having our signature inside the noise floor, as you can see in the pink curve, now we have it with a lower signature noise ratio in the purple curve without change any configuration in your setup, for example. So if you do it, you can perform better measurements without causing damage in your sample. And also what I most like about it is you can look for things that are not possible to be seen if you are using a classical device. So you can really look for discovering what is undiscovered yet. And with it, I would like to say thank you and show you a picture of what's the real experiment in reality, right? In the left side, part of the optical table that I work, and on the right side, so thank you a lot. And I hope you have a nice quantum summer here with us. And now I'll pass the word to Alex.
Wonderful. And here we see Rayssa's daily reality. For us, she is organizing the career fair, but during the day, she's actually arranging all these lenses on the optical table. Very diverse days.
One quick thing, as Alex joins, I know you have a lot of questions of Rayssa's work. As always, please put them in the Discord channel, live session questions.
Yes, and the questions are coming in. Great. Alex, single microwave photon detection based Josephson junction.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this second test day of our summer. I'm Alex Piedjou, and I'm going to hopefully talk about the Josephson-based microwave single photon detector. So this work is part of my PhD that I recently completed. It was done in the framework of the SIM project, SIM, single microwave photon detector from the ENFN. ENFN is Italian National Institute of Nuclear Physics, and in collaboration with the Department of Physics of University of Salerno, where I belong. Our goal in Salerno was to identify the parameter of the junction that are best suited for the detection of the single photon, so through extensive numerical simulation. But why single photon? Because the single photon offers promising perspective in many areas like in dark matter with action search and in quantum computer and homeland security. Why in action search? Because in dark matter, we believe that when the action, which is the hypothetical particle of the dark matter now, is close to a region, there is a stronger electromagnetic field. It decays as a photon that can be detectable. So using the Josephson junction, we view the junction as we can see, or the element we see here is the junction element. Normally, it should be a cross, like a sign of times. We have the capacitor and the resistor here. This is the junction element. And for this implementation, we view the junction as a device, as a particle, in which the particle is trapped in a washboard potential, as we can see here. And we do believe that when there is no signal, this particle can escape from here where we see omega rest. That when there is no voltage across the junction, we call this, we are here in the resistive state, the superconductive state. Where the signal arises, it moves the particle from the resistive, so from the zero voltage state to the finished voltage state, where we have this running state here. Appears quantity that we can detect. Normally is kind of escape time. Basically, this is principle with the Josephson junction, and the parameter can be tuned, as I said. The one parameter we play with, the current bias of the junction, since we play with that, because when the particle is zero voltage, that is when there is no current. When the bias, there is no current across the junction, particle is eventually trapped in the washboard potential. Now, when we change the bias current, the potential well is kind of tilt, and when the bias current is close to the critical current, the potential well so shallow so that the particle can escape from the zero voltage state to the finished voltage state, in which it appears this measurable quantity that we can call escape time. And we play with the escape time. As I mentioned, when there is no signal, also the noise present in the system, the terminal fluctuations, can trigger the particle to escape from the zero voltage state to the finished voltage state. So the idea is to discriminate between the presence of the noise when the noise is not, discriminate between the presence of the noise and when the signal is present. So we have two hypotheses. One is when the signal is not present. At this time, we have the noise that trigger the particle to escape from this potential well. The second hypothesis is when the signal is present, and also the joint action of the noise and the signal can trigger the particle to escape from this. So the idea is to discriminate, as I said, the presence of the signal, because we will have a signal here, but we don't know exactly its signal. The result is because of the noise. We have to decide if what we obtain here is because the signal is present or because of the noise. So we use some statistical tools. So I will not go too much into detail. I will stop here. Eventually, we can discuss further later in the Discord channel. Thanks.
Yeah, wonderful, Alex. And with these escape times, we might not be able to escape security so easily anymore at some point. Next is Jade LeSchack, who will present about Northrop Grumman, University of Maryland, and her own quantum computing associate.
Good morning, everyone. It's really great to have the opportunity today. I'm currently at work right now at Northrop Grumman, and video abilities are not allowed. Sorry that camera's not turned on, but I'm a physicist intern at Northrop Grumman, where they work on super technology. So I've included pictures here of what people usually think of when they see Northrop Grumman. They're a defense contractor, so they're big in aeronautical systems, space systems, worked on the James Webb Space Telescope. You might not think that they're working on something like computing. However, the work that we do here that I'm tangentially working on is related to superconductors and interfacing digital logic with super technology. So there are dilution fridges here, and a lot of the work is proprietary, so that's about all I can say about that. But I think what we at Womanium wanted to highlight is that you can be working on things like this even in places that you wouldn't have normally thought, like Northrop, because it's not just limited to academia and research at universities, but also in industry and other corporate. Yeah, that's Northrop. And some other things I'm a part of at UMD is the Ultra Cold Atoms Lab, it's a neutral atoms lab, which is really experimental, atomic, molecular, and optical. So a lot of work with lasers and walking the fibers. It was really interesting to learn about the many parts experiment, because these neutral atoms have applications to quantum networks. Specific experiment that the lab was working on when I was there was single photon isolation. So getting a single photon on demand using this setup of optical, basically. I was working on a smaller electronics project as part of the lab, but it was really, really interesting how the entire experiment fit together and see how much software and hardware really goes into all of it. And then lastly, I started the Undergraduate Quantum Association at UMD. So it's a student-run club for people interested in quantum science and technology. There was nothing that existed at UMD before this, and I really wanted to model it after other groups at other universities. We hold events like speaker series, going on tours of IonQ, because that's the closest quantum company to us, spun out of UMD, and also holding the quantum track of a hackathon that started at UMD. So we were really active in our first year, and those pictures down there are just from the hackathon, so our logo. I would encourage anyone who really wants to find opportunities in research or starting their own club to do so. You have to find the right people, and like my friend in that picture, she just said to me, wow, this sounds like a really great idea, and I'd love to help you do it. So I'm really glad that we were able to do that. Yeah, those are just some of the things that involved with.
This is a wonderful message, Jade, because you started this in your first year, and those opportunities are not just presented to you, right? You need to take the initiative to set it up yourself, and then you develop and learn and are in a lab, start a quantum club, quantum association with others and learn. Great message to take the initiative to join a lab yourself, take the initiative to set up an association yourself. Next up is Majo Lozano, intern, IBM at the moment.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marlo. Hi, everyone. This is Majo. It's very nice to see you again. I'm very excited for you to be coming today, too. Let me tell you a little bit about the type of work that I'm doing here at IBM. As Marlo already highlighted, I recently started a month ago, actually, and I'm part of the quantum organization with the IBM, and the team that I'm working with is the deployment, which is basically the team that makes sure that the processors, like the quantum computings, are ready to be used by our clients, by the general public. So far, the internship experience has been great because I really like the work environment here, the work culture, and people here seem very passionate and talented about what not only the interns, but also the full-time. So if any of you are thinking of ever applying for an internship at IBM, I would definitely recommend applying, because I think that the experience itself is really rewarding in many ways. I'm going to share with you a little bit what my project is about. Everything that I'm sharing today is coming from a research paper that was published on 2016, so around 6 years ago. So everything is public information, and I'm also attached the name of the paper underneath the figures in case you're interested in reading it. But basically, my project focuses mainly on gate optimization. As you might have already heard, a gate in quantum computing is basically an operation that you can perform on a qubit or on a couple of qubits. And a gate is basically the component that composes or makes up a quantum circuit. So a quantum circuit is made up of different gates. I'm working on the gate optimization and mostly on the hardware side of things. Right now, I'm working with a qubit entangling gate. This gate is called the cross-resonant gate, or the CR gate for short. This gate uses microwave control to switch between mechanical states. What it does, you can see what it does on the right side, is it takes one of the two qubits, which we will call the control qubit, and drives it at the frequency of the second qubit, we call the target. And by doing this, using microwave control, you can entangle the two qubits together. And so a couple of great parameters that can be optimized are the gate, for example, and also the gate error. People want the gate time short. And why is that? Well, the shorter the gate time, the more operations you can perform on a single qubit before it relaxes to the ground. And so because you probably want to perform a shorter gate time in order to perform as many operations. And then you want a very low gate error. This is, I think, like pretty much self-explanatory. But if you have a low gate error, then you can perform more operations while still getting the right answer. My project focuses mainly on the gate error optimization part. And in a nutshell, I am trying to find the right gate post time that minimizes the error per gate. When I say gate post time, it's that it takes to perform a single pull, a single gate. For this, I'm using a method called random benchmarking. And for those of you who don't know what randomized benchmarking is, it's a technique that people use to estimate error per gate, a quantum computing operation or a quantum computing. I don't want to go a lot into this, but basically what you do is that you prepare your state in initial state, it can be the ground state, zero state, and you can apply a random quantum circuit. And then after you apply this random quantum circuit, you apply the inverse of this circuit, which basically undoes the operation you just did. If these two operations are successful, then ideally you should cover your initial state. You should finish with the state that you started with because you're basically undoing it, which should be the ground state. And after that, you measure state and then you check whether or not it was actually. And the thing is, if you have an error in your gate and you have a quantum circuit, then you will have a non-zero probability of actually measuring a 1 instead of a 0. And so if you repeat this many times, eventually you might actually measure a 1. And then this one, basically that you had an error somewhere in your gate and your circuit. This is a way of understanding how many errors or like the error per single gate, depending on like how big your quantum circuit is. So this is just like a very basic overview of what I'm trying to do. You can also take a closer look at the figure on the right. It's basically a benchmarking for like different gate lengths and then seeing what lengths works best. Overall, my experience at IBM has been great so far. I have a lot from my employee, from the other employees and also from the other interns. It has been very rewarding. Definitely recommend it to people who are interested in it.
Thank you, Maha. Next week, we will have a long lecture by IBM presenting from the bottom up how superconducting quantum computing works. And then you will learn much more about it. Also on Thursday and Friday, you will learn much more about what is a quantum gate exactly, what kind of quantum gates do we have, how do they work. And I hope this presentation by Maho opens the gate for you for new internship ideas. Kriti will tell about quantum computing applications Monte Carlo finance.
Hi, yeah, awesome. I'm going to be taking it to the application side of quantum computing. Don't worry if you don't know what Monte Carlo finance means, I will explain it during. So my research has to do with using quantum technology in the real world. What we're looking at is stock options. To understand what stock options are, because I didn't even know what they were before I started this project and started looking into it. If you ever buy a house, when you buy a house, you look at the listing price. And so let's say on December 1st, I see this really nice house and I want to buy it and it says $500,000. I don't have $500,000 on me, and most people who buy a house don't have that money on them in their wallet or in cash, so they have to go through process. And usually that processing takes about a month. And so once that processing happens, let's say now the value of the house is about $800,000. So what do you pay? Do you pay the $500,000 that you saw it at or the $800,000? The answer to that is you pay the $500,000 that you saw it as, because that was the listing price and that was the price that you agreed with to the person selling the house, that I would buy it at $500,000. And so you make a $300,000 because 800 minus 500 is 300. And so that's kind of how stock options work. For example, if we look at Amazon stock on December 1st, let's say I have Amazon stock worth $500,000, that would be the strike price. That would be how much I agreed to buy that stock for. And then random events. And then on December 31st, the price of the Amazon stock has risen to $800,000, which is the spot price. And so I made $300,000 because I agreed to buy a stock option for $500,000. To kind of summarize what an option is, you buy the stock beforehand. You have to be able to predict, as someone who's buying the option or as a company buying the option, whether the price goes up or down and whether or not you'll make money. So a stock option is a way to reserve the price of the stock that you're going to buy later. It's kind of complicated, but if you're ever confused about it, just go back to the example of buying a house. So that's what a stock option is. Where quantum computing comes into this is that middle part where the random, so we don't know why the stock option increases or decreases. There's a lot of factors that go into it. What Amazon's company image is overall in the media, other factors such as other stock technologies developed, so many different. And so quantum computing in its applications currently is used for optimization, random variables, and prediction. And so that's where my project comes in. And what we're doing is we're using quantum computing models to predict where the stock option will go. This idea actually comes from a TV show called Westworld, which is where I got the inspiration to project from. And so that kind of shows you that the inspiration for this project for quantum computing can come from everywhere. Spoilers alert, but in Westworld, they have a device that can start it off as trying to predict stock options and ended up predicting the paths of every single human being. So we're not going to go that far. That would probably take thousands of years. So Monte Carlo is not the city or the famous Selena Gomez movie that we're referring to, but it's referring to a series of predictive models that are used throughout different fields such as city planning and chemistry and biology. We're using quantum computing to optimize those Monte Carlo models and to make it faster. So if you look at a Monte Carlo graph, it would be like this. And then the only thing faster than that would be like an exponential graph, but those aren't very accurate. And so the quantum computing line is in the middle and gives us an accurate representation of the stock option. So that's my project. I started this project again. It was self-initiated. I really enjoyed computing and I really wanted to explore it. So about 3 years ago, I just started cold emailing professors at my university, and around high school that I was in, I ended up working for a lab at the city, which is where my journey with quantum computing started. It was a different project. And over the years, that's what I've done, just cold email professors with my ideas and been able to do a lot of cool projects. And I say that to say that don't be intimidated by quantum computing. And quantum computing is a very open field where people are really passionate about it. Email someone with your idea. They will definitely try to help you and teach you as much as they can.
Fantastic, Sanskriti, and a wonderful example how quantum computing can be applied. Next up is something totally different, quantum cognition by Jyoti Rani, currently interning at IonQ.
Yeah, hi everyone. Very excited to be here. Like Marlene said, my name is Jyoti Rani. I'm a rising sophomore at UC Berkeley studying engineering and business. I was at IonQ last summer and I'm back again this summer. And today I just wanted to share a little bit of background context, some of the literature from quantum cognition with all of you. So what is quantum cognition? The general idea is to basically take the unique properties of quantum mechanics, which you all will be diving into quite soon, and apply it to human decision making and thinking. And there's a specific example that I would like to share with all of you today, which is called the prisoner's dilemma. So in this scenario, it's a logical scenario. Imagine that there are two prisoners. They each have the choice to either cooperate or defect. Defect means they are not snitching on whether the other prisoner, it was their partner in crime, whereas cooperate means they do tell the police the other person was or was not my partner in crime. It is better for each prisoner to cooperate given the terms that the police have set out in terms of jail time, etc. So what we are going to look at here on this slide is the second prisoner's decision given the first prisoner's choice. So if the first prisoner chooses to cooperate, the second prisoner is also going to choose to cooperate with a probability of 0.74. Whereas if the first prisoner chooses to defect, the second prisoner will choose to still cooperate with the probability of 0.8. So according to the classical laws of probability, specifically the total probability, the second prisoner choosing to cooperate, if he doesn't know whether the first prisoner cooperated or defected, should be between this range of 0.74 and 0.87. However, in psychology experiments that have been conducted in real life, and this has been seen in this model and various other situations as well, that's not what happens. Instead, when the second prisoner doesn't know whether the first cooperated or defected, the probability of him cooperating dips to 0.4, not within the range. Over the years, from psychologists to mathematicians, they have tried to find models to explain this anomaly. It's called the disjunction fallacy. It also goes by the name of a violation of the sure thing principle, in case you're familiar with those. We have Markov chains, Bayesian models. We've used a variety of different mathematical structures to try and explain these. However, when you do the computation of what is the likelihood of the second prisoner cooperating if he doesn't know what his partner did, you aren't able to reach that point. You aren't able to get that low in your probability. So in the quantum cognition, what some folks came up with was the idea of replacing the probability with probability, the quantum mechanics scheme of probability. What they were mainly after here on the right with the quantum version is the interference. If you write it out, and I know this equation looks a little bit scary looking, but this is basically just the quantum version of the classical law of total probability. So you have a summation over the amplitude squared, there's the first term here, and then you have the second term, which is the interference effect. And the cosine term is specifically circled here because varying these theta parameters allows you to reach that 0.68 lower value that classical probability models are not able to predict. So essentially, whenever you have a quantum Bayesian network and you are able to utilize these effects that interference has, you are able to model the relations that we make day to day in situations all around you. These are some interesting ideas, the disjunction effect, in addition to something called order effects. For example, if you had to rate a politician A before politician B versus you rated politician B before politician A, that's called an order effect because people have quite a varying response depending on the order in which you were asked to rate politicians. These are just another example of where you see kind of anomalies that classical models have difficulty in predicting, and the value that quantum cognition may provide. The overall aim is to work towards a generalized model that is able to take into account the variety of these anomalies that we've seen with seemingly irrational decisions. So something that I thought was very cool about this field, I'm just generally interested in this area, which is what I've been tinkering with this summer. One thing I thought that was very interesting about this project was I had to read books on quantum economics and finance, and I was reading about social science, a little bit of neuroscience as well. And it really tied in with fields and areas and created connections with quantum and something else that I didn't know existed before. So for all of you who come from maybe an economics background or some other social science background, there are these very, very interesting areas to explore.
Awesome. Thank you, Jyoti. Great presentation. All right. And next we have Radhan. Radhan is based out of New Delhi, finishing his master's program.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vardaan. I basically love fiddling around with quantum algorithms. I have a background in theoretical physics, but in quantum computation, I'm more towards the software. It's not like I do not like the hardware field, it's just that I love programming much. Today, I'll be talking about one of my past products in quantum computation, that is the simulation of quantum tunneling phenomena on quantum computers. I chose this project for two particular reasons. Those reasons are first, that I developed this particular project prototype during one of the hackathons. So this might act as an inspiration for anyone who's looking forward to the Womanium hack. And secondly, this project is actually quite simple enough for even the beginners to at least understand the concept. But at the same time, it poses some really interesting research costs for some of the quantum veterans who are here. So I'll start with a very short intro as to what quantum tunneling is. In the classical world, particles cannot cross across a high enough potential barrier. As seen in this first picture, the electron incident onto a barrier simply gets reflected back, right? It cannot cross the barrier. But now if you see the second picture, a quantum mechanical world, due to the wave nature of the particles, crossing a barrier actually becomes possible. This sounds a little bit crazy, and the reason for that, simply put, is because quantum is strange. So now that we have understood what quantum tunneling is, the next step is to try and simulate this particular phenomena using quantum computers. And to do that, there is some complex math involved. I won't go into that. It's about split operators and Lie-Trotter formalism and much more. But I will skip that and straight away go on to the final equation and how that equation has been implemented in an algorithm format. So we start with the Schrodinger equation for a particle. We measure its potential over half a time step in real space. We take the Fourier transform and then measure the kinetic energy. But this time the kinetic energy is measured over a complete space. We then take an inverse Fourier transform to obtain the wave function back in the real space, complete the potential measurement by operating it again for another half a step. And finally, plotting the new wave, which is basically just a time evolution of the initial wave. The results from this simulation are actually quite interesting because it helps us visualize this quantum tunneling phenomena taking place in real time in the form of history. So in this slide, if you look at the top left, it shows a random potential barrier which I have generated on my own. And the top right picture shows the time evolution of this wave function being depicted as the probability density histogram. And what this basically means that if I combine the two small pictures and overlap them, I obtain this bigger picture, which is the final result, in which the incident wave function after hitting the barrier from the right hand side doesn't get reflected back. Instead, it tunnels through this barrier and we see a lower probability wave on the left hand side of the barrier. So this is what the main focus of the experiment was. So I personally feel to better understand or to much better appreciate the quality of this experiment is when we compare the simulation with a theoretical model of quantum. So over here you can actually compare my results from the experiment simulation with a theoretically constructed model where a particle tunneling through the potential barrier actually shows very similar results when simulated a quantum computer. That brings me to the final as to why I'm so excited about simulating seriously weird phenomena on a quantum computer. And the answer lies in this vast applications of quantum mechanics. Yes, these are some of the potential industrial applications of this quantum tunneling phenomenon, apart from some of the obvious ones like tunnel diodes and tunneling microscopes, which inherently use tunneling phenomena. We see some new potential use cases as well. Research in material science and drug discoveries are some of the emerging fields where successful simulation and maybe extensive study into quantum tunneling could eventually help advance the field. Now, I won't go into great details of each of these industrial use cases since that would take a lot more time. So I think that's it. Ending it on a positive note that complete code has been set open source. It's available in my GitHub repo. Anyone wants to collaborate or maybe join my work for any of these use cases I just mentioned before, just hit me up on LinkedIn or maybe Discord, and maybe we can talk about extending this work forward. So I'd like to end my presentation now. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Vardaan. Excellent presentation. And thank you all as well. We wanted to share with you the Womanium team. Not only we worked hard for the last many months to make a program with you, but they're all doing very excellent research and projects in quantum computing by themselves. Certainly people we can partner with, look up to, and if you join the quantum computing field, these will be your peers for the next many years to come. Perfect. So now Marlo can go over the program with you.
Yeah, wonderful. We have a 3-minute break now. Gibran, Rashid from QWorld will get ready, and then you will get your start of your quantum journey in quantum programming, starting with classical systems and an introduction to quantum. What you heard so far, all the research presentation were to give you inspiration. You don't need to understand everything by now. You will understand more at the end of it, but it's not needed. What is next? Get your focus. This is what you need to understand now. Ask your questions to be able to understand it and make the quiz later today or tomorrow for the lecture. I think we all knew what a bit is, 1, 0, but with the matrices, you added some additional dimensions. Today, we started with the Womanium quantum spotlights, discussed everything from quantum sensing with light, the prisoner's dilemma with quantum, or quantum computing applications in finance. I hope you got inspired by that, and then you got a solid basis by Gibran, followed up the transition into quantum tomorrow. As Gibran explained, for today, there are Jupyter notebook and repeat everything, do the homework, and then there is a Canvas quiz, the assignment. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow again, same time, with, skip to the slide, 2 great presentations. We will start with William Oliver, the director of the Center of Quantum Engineering, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in the US. He will give an introduction to quantum computing, starting again from the history and the qubits all the way to where we are now, how a quantum computer is built, and what the applications are. And then Gibran will continue with bronze about quantum systems and the basics of quantum program. Thank you very much all. Keep on discussing on Discord, do the Canvas quiz and Jupyter notebooks, and we will see you all tomorrow again. We will close the session now. See you tomorrow.